Can you believe the cuteness of SCP-999 is being challenged by a cat? Like, the most viral sensation on the internet, cat videos? SCP-529 Josie the Half-Cat is something that is referenced in this SCP Explained video in comparison to SCP-999 maybe not being the cutest. Now, listen, don't get me wrong, SCP-999 is a blob, okay? It's the most lovable, adorable blob in the universe, but it's a blob. Like, so is a dollop of mayonnaise, or a squish of guacamole, or a glob of toothpaste. You know what I mean? Those things aren't cute in comparison to an adorable puppy or kitten or any of these baby animals that you see on the internet. But the fact remains that I suppose there are contenders out there, and SCP Explained is going to bring them out. We're going to react to them, guys. Make sure to subscribe to SCP Explained. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too, and let's see who's cuter.
Josie is a half-cat. No,
yes,
she isn't half-cat, half something else. And she's not a humanoid with feline features either.
Right.
She is literally half of a cat.
She balances.
Actually, to be more precise, she is the front half, but an otherwise ordinary black and gray tabby cat.
A cat booty would just be weird if it was just walking around.
Legs or hindquarters. You might think that'd make it hard for Josie to get around. But if you asked her on how only being a half-cat affects her on a daily basis, well, she wouldn't be able to answer you due to the simple fact that cats generally can't speak. But nevertheless, Josie will happily and effortlessly walk around on her own two legs, moving as if she had a second pair of hind legs in place behind her. Her back half isn't invisible. It's as if it's not even there at all.
Like in another dimension or something?
And yet, it can give a slight yield when touched, being almost tangible, but
it's ethereal-like.
Despite this, Josie suffers no adverse health problems or any other complications.
I think this was in a cat video that I covered a long time ago.
Occasionally, she doesn't mind having her semi-corporeal hindquarters stroked, I don't remember though. Although she will usually get a little bit scratchy if people try that. So, how does the SCP Foundation keep an anomaly like Josie contained? Well, it turns out
in a cage?
That they don't really need to. She's perfectly harmless and is actually allowed to roam freely around the lower levels of the facility she's kept at. Casually as you like, she slinks around the corridors, passing from one room to the next. Of course, if cats could talk, then Josie would probably tell you that she has the run of the whole facility. The only real question left is,
most cute kittens get their way,
what does a half-cat do when she's left to wander around a Foundation facility completely unsupervised? Easy. She starts looking for a ball of yarn.
She just wants to
Josie
play
was sure
like
she'd seen one somewhere around here. One of the researchers had carried it off for testing not too long ago. Her small front paws patted against the ground as Josie navigated her way to where she last remembered seeing that coveted ball of yarn being taken. She passed a group of researchers, one of them kneeling down to give her a friendly scratch behind the ears. Just as she closed her eyes and purred at the greeting, a sound coming from down the hall startled her. It was a low, distressed sobbing. Having never been taught that old saying about curiosity in cats, Josie slunk past the researcher's legs towards the source of the noise. The room that the crying was coming from had no windows. No way for her to get in.
Is it?
Luckily, Josie, despite only having half a body,
it's Shy
had enough
Guy,
determination and resourcefulness for 2 whole cats. Around the corner, she knew there was an open air vent, and sure enough, she leaped gracefully.
Why would there be an open air vent in a containment changer, the most dangerous entity in the universe? One of them?
The echoing sound of sobs guiding her. As she
I'm not buying
the grate looking out into the windowless room, Josie spotted a tall, thin creature sitting with its back to her. Its arms would have been long enough to reach the ground if it had stood at its full height, but for now they were wrapped tightly around its legs.
Poor Shy Guy,
as the creature
always
rocked back
tormented.
and forth. Its loud wails showed that it was clearly in a great deal of distress, although Josie wouldn't be able to understand why having someone look at its face would make this slender creature so upset. Nearby, there was a giant metal cube with a hole ripped in it, and while the rest of the room was empty, there seemed to be several large red smears on the ground.
Oh!
How strange. She cocked her head to one side and meowed, tapping one paw against the air vent grate. It seemed pretty loose. With a few good pushes, the screws came free, and the adorable half-cat hopped down into the room.
And they call this containment, guys.
She noticed it had a black bag covering its face. Little did Josie know, An hour earlier, a junior researcher had made the terrible mistake of putting on a pair of X-ray glasses he ordered from the back
Oh
of a
my
comic book.
god.
As it turns out,
Seriously?
these were the only ones to ever actually work. He saw right through 096's containment cube, and all
I remember it was a long
loose.
time ago.
But Josie didn't mind. She decided to endear herself to the strange, shy
Wouldn't he be
creature by
checking
rubbing
the
up
door?
against its long leg. Returning the same affection that it had so rarely been given, it bent down and gently scooped Josie up in its spindly arms. The pair of them sat in the corner together, Josie getting herself comfortable on the tall creature's lap, purring as long fingers ran over her
096 is just a
The
little
creature, being so
crybaby.
careful
He's
not
a
to
gentle
harm the
soul.
half-cat,
He's
treated
just
her like
misunderstood.
she was as delicate as glass. It had briefly stopped crying thanks to its visitor, and as much as she noticed the sounds of sobbing had ceased, Josie would never understand the difference she had made to SCP-096's
So is that an anomalous
den.
trait, though?
Unfortunately, it wasn't long before their encounter was cut
Like
short.
the Scarlet
A legion
King's
of guards
baby
and
blob
scramble
son?
goggles burst into the room to retake control of the situation. The last thing they expected to see was 096 sitting calmly with Josie on its lap,
Right.
a bag covering its face. But the sudden entrance of a security team startled the poor half-cat. Within a second, she had bolted out of the room, shooting under the legs of the guards and back out into the facility.
Wow.
Now that she was back outside, Josie recalled her earlier hunt for a ball of yarn to play
Yes.
with. She still
Carrying
wasn't
on.
sure where it had gotten to. Maybe someone had moved it. Pacing over to the elevator, she stared up
It's
at
a
the
nice
heavy
change of
steel
pace.
doors. The numbers above were gradually ticking down, denoting which floor the elevator had currently
Who
stopped
coming
at.
down?
Of course, Josie couldn't read, so instead she sat and meowed loudly at the elevator. Maybe if she made enough noise, the doors would eventually open. Eventually, after a few
Typical
short
cat.
minutes of waiting and growling, the doors slid apart. Another gaggle of researchers passed her by, and Josie plodded into the elevator, spotting a familiar face. One of the researchers, a doctor by the name of
Sophie
Cartwright, was
Cartwright.
still inside, and smiled down at the half-cat explorer. Dr. Cartwright had come across Josie a few times, enough for the intrepid little tabby to consider them friends. Where to, Josie?
What is she
Dr.
saying?
Cartwright asked, her hand hovering over the elevator's buttons. As if in reply, Josie looked up and meowed. Humans always seemed to smile if she meowed after they'd said something to her. Sophie chuckled and pushed the door close button. Hold the elevator, another much gravelier voice called. A hand,
Side
or
directive?
rather a paw, reached out and caught the doors before they could slide closed. It was another of the Foundation's doctors, one with both a considerable reputation
I don't
and
know
a
who that
very
is.
distinguishing look, to say the least. Dr. Kane Pathos Crow stepped inside the
Kane
elevator and
Pathos
pushed one of the
Crow,
buttons.
which is a dog.
Sophie had to force herself to keep her head down, but couldn't help herself from stealing the occasional glance up at Dr. Crow. She heard the rumors about a peculiar anomalous event changing his appearance, but had never seen him up close before.
So,
Josie, on the other hand, couldn't
just
take
changes?
her eyes off Crow, staring up at him, frozen to the spot, and letting out a low, cautious
Does anybody ever try to pat
If
him
her tail
over
was
there?
visible, Sophie would have seen it swaying from side to side
Oh.
as the brave little half-cat kept her defensive ground, standing between her friend Dr. Cartwright and her mortal enemy.
Oh,
You see,
gosh.
Dr. Crow was a dog,
Yeah.
or at least a man who had been turned into something very much like a dog, still capable of
Trying to
speech, but with a distinctively
lure him with a
canine
bone?
body. Crow kept to himself the entire
Like,
ride
sucker,
down,
not a real
although
dog,
Sophie
just
could feel
looked
the
like one.
tension between the dog-bodied doctor and her little half-cat friend. Out of the
Yeah.
corner of his eye, Dr. Crow spotted Josie trying his best to ignore her. He let out a low, discomforted growl, the kind a dog makes when they're on edge. To his credit, he couldn't really help it. The man had been turned into a canine after all.
He's
But it
legit
took
a
all
real
his
canine.
stoicism to suppress a bark and to stop himself from chasing
He has
Josie
the
around
impulses,
cramped
right?
elevator. Arriving
Can
at her
you
floor,
imagine,
Sophie
dude?
stepped down, followed by little Josie,
Oh,
who moved as
bruh.
far away from Crow as quickly as she could.
Mhm.
The doors closed once more and sent him further down
The
into
thought
the
of not
depths
having
of
to
the
wear
facility.
pants is
As she turned to
interesting,
look, Sophie noticed Josie had craned her head up to check on her. "Aw, were you protecting me, Josie?" she asked with a smile, bending down to thank the half-cat with a scratch behind the ears. Before she could stay for too long, Josie and her human companion parted, each heading down separate winding corridors. There was a funny smell hanging in the air, like something
Bubbles?
gradually melting and bubbling, only to reform and melt again, filling the half-cat's pink nose with a strange burning scent. As she passed a holding cell, something broke Josie's concentration yet again, the noise of a hand tapping at glass. She turned and instantly meowed a greeting to the second familiar face of the day, albeit a more beaked face. Kneeling down on the other side of the glass,
The plague
the
doctor.
black-robed plague doctor waved politely at the dual-pod passerby.
Does
Sitting in front of
Josie
the glass,
have the
hoping to be let
pestilence?
in, Josie
Does
gave
Josie
another
need to be
meow.
cured?
I'm quite well, the doctor mused. And how are you, my dear? He asked politely.
Apparently,
Josie got up on her back legs.
he's not
or
real,
rather, that's what it would have looked like if she had hindquarters. Instead, it looked like she was almost floating.
I don't think
from
she has the
halfway down,
pestilence,
stretching
according to
her
him.
front paws up, reaching towards the bird-like face as the masked doctor playfully tapped his fingers against the glass to amuse his feline friend. No, I cannot let you in, I'm afraid. He sighed, sounding a touch more melancholic. Not that a half-cat can understand the difference in someone's clothes. Not all of us here are gifted the freedom you enjoy, my furry friend. Freedom is not something this organization would ever understand, no matter how much they claim to know us.
Yeah, but you've used cute, brother.
From the other side of the glass, Josie blinked and cocked her head.
I'm sure
to
you're
one
real
side,
charming when you're not
confused.
trying to destroy
She barely heard
humanity.
a word he said. Oh, but listen to me, go on. The plague doctor chuckled, wrapping his fingers in front of the half-cat again. I suppose you'll be looking for that ball of yarn they took for testing. I saw them carrying the box. It was in that way.
He's telling him
He
where it's
pointed,
at.
and Josie's little green cat eyes followed the direction of his finger. Barely able to comprehend what had been said to her, she simply meowed up in thanks and plodded.
I'm glad
away
I'm not an
as she
SCP.
directed.
Can you imagine being
Farewell,
contained?
Josie.
I mean,
SCP-049
people get prison
said
and
quietly
stuff,
from
but
inside its cell, watching the
pretty
half-cat
secure over
until
there.
she had disappeared from view. As she continued through the lower levels of the facility, Josie slipped through doors seconds before they closed, leapt up onto tables and dashed between legs. That strange smell was back, having caught her attention and distracted her from her quest again. Tracking it to its source, Josie suddenly felt uneasy.
Really?
She entered a room with a huge vat of acid, the source of the burning scent she picked up on. Though it was what was inside
The
vat,
Tarask.
trapped in a loop of regenerating itself only to be melted over and over again by the acid, that got her feeling defensive. The vast reptilian monstrosity sensed a small life form outside its tank and opened one yellow eye, squinting through the searing, burning acid at the tiny little creature staring up at it. The reptile snarled, screwing its now healed eyes shut and swiping what was left of its limbs at the glass.
Not real happy about that.
Josie gave the monster her fiercest hiss, baring her fangs at it. The
Get out
beast
of there,
usually
Josie.
abhorred other beings, finding
Not a
all
real
other
nice
forms
place
of
to
life
be.
unnatural, unforgivable, and so detestable that it would normally stop at nothing to eradicate them. But today, a tiny tabby cat with her entire back half missing was standing up to the crocodilian nightmare, and it barely had enough will to retaliate.
Oh,
Maybe it was
God.
just too lethargic, too tired to try anything today.
It's only
Perhaps
a cat.
it didn't think she was worth
It's
the
not
effort,
threatened
or
either, right?
figured it would see to her, along with the researchers and guards, next time it broke free from containment and went on yet another
Gosh,
killing
I'm sure you
spree.
have better
But in
things to
Josie's
do.
mind, this facility
Didn't worry
was
about a
her
cat,
home,
682.
and brave little half-cat had scared SCP-682 into staying put.
Yeah,
As she
you'd
trotted
think.
away again, she knew that the monstrous reptile would have to think twice before messing with her.
Oh my God.
Back on track at last, Josie rounded the corner and arrived in a familiar-looking corridor. She was certain this was where she'd seen a researcher carrying the box containing the string that she coveted. Sure enough,
I think
she
this
could
whole
see
journey
into
is
the room
leading
where
to the
box
tickle
had been
monster,
left.
y'all.
Noticing a group of researchers and a human in an orange jumpsuit were gathered around it.
Poor
A few were
D-class.
making notes on their clipboards at a safe distance, while the one in orange stepped closer to the box. Josie watched as a single bee flew out of the box. Her feline eyes followed it, ready to pounce if it came close enough. The man wearing the jumpsuit was waving his arms, trying to swat the insect away. A moment later, he grabbed his arm in pain. The bee had gotten agitated, stinging him and flying away, somehow surviving. As she waited, Josie's patience was rewarded. The researchers and the man wearing orange bustled their way out of the room, offering her the chance she needed to zip between them and get one step closer to her prize. The room was entirely
Dang
empty,
helicopters
save for the
outside.
box in the center, sitting precariously atop a table. Wiggling herself as she readied her invisible and intangible back legs, Josie shot up, just missing the table's edge. She clawed and scratched at the surface, trying to pull herself up, but her lack of hindquarters made it impossible to climb the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Dropping back to the floor,
Just need to
she
take
looked
another
up
jump.
at the table and gave it a loud, indignant meow. Changing tactics, she started to hop up on one of the table legs, digging her claws into the woodwork to hoist herself up bit by bit. Sure enough, her new strategy worked a treat, and Josie was presented with what she had been searching for. One final hurdle was left, however. The box was closed. Now the struggles of only being a half-cat are one thing, but not having opposable thumbs is a difficulty
Huge.
that has plagued all cats since
Be
the
thankful,
dawn of
you guys.
time.
Be thankful.
But not being able to grab or hold things with the ease of a human,
Just shove it
there's one
over and
thing
break
that
it.
cats are great at.
This
and
cat
that's
is a
pushing
menace.
things over. Nudging the box
Definitely
to the table's edge
a
with a
menace.
gentle boop of her nose, Josie
Mischief
eventually tipped the whole
doesn't
thing
make
off,
cute, though.
causing it to land on its side on the floor, the lid falling open. Triumphantly, she jumped back down to claim her prize, expecting to find the ball of yarn and spend the next few hours playing with it. But something was wrong. The yarn had changed, and now it was looking at her.
Anomalous
The ball
yarn?
had started as yarn and ribbon, the perfect plaything for any half-cat or full cat for that matter. But the Foundation had been running their usual invasive tests on it, and since cutting a portion of the string off, it had transformed. It was now a ball of meat, functioning blinking eyes staring out of a mass of overlapping sinew and blood-red matter. The multiple eyes looked up at the half-cat that had knocked it to the floor
I mean, I
and
love
asked
meat,
a single
not
question,
a
with
live
deep voice emanating
eyeball
from somewhere
meat.
within its lipless form. Are you Eric?
No.
Completely unfazed by this, Josie whacked the ball with her paw and watched as it rolled halfway across the room. Tentacle segments of its body gradually pulled the amorphous mass back to where it started, and then asked once again, "Are you Eric?" Once again, Josie slapped the ball and watched it roll away from her, both completely unaware of who Eric was, and a little perturbed that
What
someone
this
had
was.
replaced the ball of yarn with such an inadequate
Right.
toy. Turning her back on SCP-066,
Funny he didn't try to eat it.
Josie the Half-Cat searched for a way out
Cats
of the room.
like meat,
and
right?
went back to prowling around the facility for something to
Like,
entertain
it would
herself.
just tear it up.
She noticed that she was starting to get hungry. Maybe
What if
if
it
she got
smelled
lucky,
bad
one
like
of the
cat food?
researchers would sneak her a piece of cheese. Now go and check out
Eat some meat.
SCP-999, the Tickle Monster, and SCP-348, a gift from Dad, for more anomalies that are classified as sweet, cute, or playful.
Wait. Man, you trying to tell me that it didn't even reference an interaction with 999? Feeling a little clickbaited, y'all. Gotta lie. No, don't get me wrong. Josie's pretty interesting, right? It's just a regular old cat that just missing half her body, like it's ethereal or something like that. It has nothing to do with cuteness. In matter of fact, now that we on the subject of cute, like I already dissed 999 a little bit about, you know, the blob and stuff, but a half a cat is definitely not as cute as a whole cat. Like, don't get me wrong, cat booty is not attractive, but it's a strange looking phenomenon, you know, a cat with no behind legs, with no tail to wag, and that's part of the charm, you know, not being like weirded out by it, I guess. And even though it can make the shy guy feel better, 999 could too, you know. Matter of fact, probably anybody could if they don't look at him. Anyway, guys, make sure to subscribe to SCP Explained. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.